APHEX TWIN. Again. I haven't done an APHEX TWIN video since the Metasynth one, which was what, like a lot of months ago? So yeah, I haven't done an APHEX TWIN video in ages, so here's another one. This one is kind of a revisit of my Syro / Collapse EP sequencing video. Now, this video is going to be focusing more on actually making the sounds and sequencing them a little bit instead of just the sequencing. However, if you haven't seen that original video, I'd highly recommend it because it does cover some things that I don't cover in this video. But anyway, we are going to try to make a little beat that sounds like it came off of the Syro or the Collapse EP. So, you know, the two later things. I wouldn't say as much black box, but, you know, whatever. So yeah, we're going to be using some LINN drum samples. They should come in your Ableton calls library. And yeah, that's about it. We're just going to try and make an APHEX TWIN beat. If you saw my YouTube short or my Instagram reel or my TikTok, because yes, I am on TikTok now because I'm fucking trendy, we're going to be recreating that little T69 inspired beat I did. This video came out a week earlier on my Patreon. So if you can, go subscribe to my Patreon. There's a bunch of extra stuff on there. If not, that's absolutely fine. I appreciate you watching this video anyway. But thank you to my Patreons. Here you all are, once again. I really appreciate your support. It really helps me out, genuinely. And yeah. Cool. Right, let's get into it. Let's get into LINN drum sounds and ba-ba-ba and fucking funky stuff and cool pitch bends and yeah. Okay, first grab a drum rack and then you're going to want to chuck a sampler in it with these ADSR settings. So it's basically just sustain. That is a big part of this drum sound, people. Then set it to mono and turn off the LFO and filter. Then if you go into your search all and type in LD, then go into your packs, we should have some LINN drum samples in the core library. So we're going to grab those. And then we're going to group the sampler with itself so we can use the macros. I normally like to just use two when making drum kits, so I can map macro 1 to the transposition and macro 2 to the volume. Alright, and now we're grabbing a bunch of other LINN drum samples, and we don't need to keep bringing the sampler in, so we can just hold Alt and click and drag the previous sample we put in, because they all need the exact same settings, bar one, actually. But anyway, I know I've done this video before technically, but that was only on the sequencing. I'll link that video here. And also I did that little YouTube short or reel or whatever you call it. And this is what we're going to try to make today. It's basically what I did in that reel. So I think it sounded quite good. Anyway, here's the drum pattern, but that open hi-hat isn't the open hi-hat. That's a closed one. So we're going to edit it to sound, well, you know, a lot more closed. Because even though that's just sustain, it still sounds really open, so we're just changing the ADSR. And I think that sounds much better. Cool, and then a bit more editing, a bit more tweaking, nothing really of importance. We just put the hi-hat open and closed into the same choke group right there, then mixing them a little bit, and here's what we got. As you can see, these snares are much shorter than a 16th note, and that's why we're only using sustain, because like that tiny little it's very short. Alright, so now I'm just adding this little kind of drum mastering audio effect track I have for this exact drum kit. As you can see, it's ridiculous. So yeah, saturator, bit of reverb if we want to use the drum room macro, redux if we want to use a sample macro, compression, a mental EQ, utility, drum bus, and then another EQ on top of that. It's ridiculous, but it seems to work for these samples. Okay, now, if you enable your sends and returns in drum rack with the little S and R, we are going to kind of do what I did in the Square Pusher video, where we have like a performance box with multi-effects. It's a little bit different. These are going to be send effects instead of insert effects. So let's grab a reverb, chuck it in, set the dry wet to 100%, and then highlight every single drum sample we have and send it to the reverb. Then we are going to get an envelope MIDI, again like in the Square Pusher video I did the other week. Just quickly rename it to reverb. Let me capitalize that as well. And then set the envelope MIDI to just sustain. Change mod to remote. Map it to the reverb's volume. And as you can see, when I'm hitting it, it's spitting out different volumes. So we need to turn velocity off. And 100% turns out to be 6 dB, but we want it at 0 dB. So I'm just trying to figure out where that is, and it turns out it's 85% on the dot. So now we can just kind of copy and paste this envelope MIDI for any other effects we want, because they'll all be the same. And it works beautiful. Now we're also doing that with a shifter. And a spectral resonator, because that feels very APHEX Twin. Make sure to press the quantize button too. That really gets that APHEX Twin sound out. So now I'm just doing another little drum pattern with the effects this time. A lot of editing. Really kind of depends what you want. But yeah, you can put any effects in there. Plugins, stock effects, whatever. And then we're going to insert another audio track, set it to resampling, and record that one MIDI clip. Beautiful. Again, this is very much like the Square Pusher video I did the other week. In terms of, we're just going to write more and more kind of one-bar drum patterns. Oh, and always, I like to start off with a really simple kick and snare pattern and then just build around that. But again, the sequencing side of things, I definitely think you should watch the other APHEX Twin video I did last year. I think it's last year. And then resample that one too, and make another one. This one is, yeah, this one's a 4-bar loop. And again, like that Square Pusher video, we're going to have all these be in audio, so then we can chop up the audio too. And that 4-bar one is much more involved and syncopated and groovy. Bam, recorded, lovely. Alright, cool. And now we're going to grab these and bring them into our arrangement view so we can chop up the audio too. Cool, so I just want to work with that 4-bar loop for now. And yeah, we are just going to chop it up, find bits to duplicate and repeat, find bits to reverse, find bits to stretch. This can be quite tedious, but it is really worth it. And this one isn't too good, because I mean, it's rushed, but it works. So like, yeah, with that little tom fill, I want it to be a lot more glitchy. So I've just repeated the toms instead of having it as MIDI, using it as audio, because then that also repeats the reverb. And we're also sending it into our main tracks reverb too. So yeah, automate stuff, chop it up, reverse it. As I said in the Square Pusher video,
never stop chopping.
Cool. So I mean, that's already 4 bars worth. So now we can work on our next 4 bars just by dragging over our little arrangement looper grid thingy. So now we're just going to get some other audio samples, chop them up, use triplets as well. Triplets are always good to do. Here we are pitching up the snare by going into our sample clips envelopes and clicking on the pitch wheel. And then we're just going to carry on editing bits. I do change that pitch bend though, because going up sounds awful. Also, another great tip, if you have chopped up a tiny bit of a sample, you can hold Option and Shift, and then you can drag through the sample. So, oh yeah, here I'm changing it. So you don't have to keep copying and pasting different bits of audio. You can just drag it around. But yeah, we're going to make a little tape stoppy kind of effect by pitching it down with a curve. I think that sounds quite nice. And here is our full 8 bars. But yeah, don't be afraid of the triplets. Repeating audio sounds glitchier than repeating MIDI. It's the whole argument of what's better, MIDI or audio, and personally I think if you do both, that is going to sound the best. So now highlight it all, Command J to consolidate it, and then you have a full 8-bar loop. Alright, so now we're going to try and make the T69 pad. Here are the chords I wrote. And I did this because it seems like a lot of APHEX Twin's chords are duophonic and not much more. Now we're just going to make a very simple padding operator. So a little bit of attack, quite a lot of release. Just a typical kind of pad sound, really. Take out all the resonance, turn the frequency down a little bit, and change the oscillator to a saw wave. Yeah. And then have your filter envelope almost follow your amp envelope. Now, it's a really simple patch, really quite a boring pad, but we do some stuff in the audio in a bit, and I think that makes it, in all honesty. In the YouTube short, I did use my hardware for this, so a DeepMind 12 and an APHEX station by Novation. Anyway, so that's why it's going to sound quite different. We're going to bounce it to audio because I found that a big part of this sound is more pitch automation. Now, we could have done this with a pitch wheel, but in all honesty, I think this sounds more cool and broken, and that, I don't know, I've gotten the best results from doing it like this rather than just putting it into a pitch envelope in the synth. So at the start of every chord, we're going to have it kind of whine by pitching the chords about 7 semitones up or an octave up, and then having a nice curve down. Now that's a bit extreme, so we're just going to change it a bit. But yeah, I find it better to do it like this, to have it sound a bit more broken and unstable, because, I don't know, when you do it with a pitch envelope in the synth, it does sound very clean. Cool, we've added some chorus and a filter to it, and that is about it for that synth. However, we are going to grab the utility, so every time a chord hits, we're going to change the panning. And now, a bit of extreme EQ, take out some of the mids, really boost the highs. Bit of saturator to try and make it sound a bit more analog. Again, I originally did this on an analog synth, so I'm trying my best to recreate it, my bad. Alright, not too shabby. I mean, it's sounding a bit like the T69 pad, but I like to do this to make digital stuff sound analog. If you get an echo, but use none of the echo, so turn down your feedback, turn down the input, and then if you go into character, there's a noise oscillator, which I really like the sound of. I mean, it's a bad noise, but it sounds like it could be analog. That's how it sounds. Again, to try and make it sound a bit more analog. And then just boosting the higher frequencies even more to try and bring out that noise without having to turn it up all the time, because it does get a bit annoying. Alright, and then for the pluck bit, I'm going to cheat and just use the MIDI I got last time, but this is how I got that MIDI. Get the chords, and then chop them up with Command and E, and use your arrow keys to kind of figure out how many chops you want. Then what I did is I highlighted each chop, went into the MIDI clips arpeggiator, not the MIDI effect arpeggiator, and just messed around with the settings, like the distance being different scale degrees and blah blah blah, and until I got something good. So yeah, you know, this is how I did it. I couldn't recreate it, and I really like the kind of melody that's going on with the lead I did before, so I'm just going to copy and paste it in. But this is what I did, and then I just pitched it up an octave. Just change the synth a little bit, because that's quite a lot. But this is the MIDI from that YouTube short. I didn't add any notes, I don't think, but I did edit some. And that's the really good thing about the MIDI clip arpeggiator, is that it's all permanent, you know, it's in your clip. So now you can just kind of, once you've done all your chop arpeggiating, is that a word? Sure. You can just edit it around and get it to be perfect. So this is the original MIDI clip now. And now we're just changing the synth again a little bit because I'm indecisive and I can't make a decision. But this isn't sounding too bad, you know? It follows the chords whilst also being interesting enough. Again, a lot of that is by changing the distance of the scale degrees. So it's not just the exact same 2 or 4 notes the whole time, because again, that's the issue with duophonic chords, is arpeggiating them sucks. But if you change the distance with steps as well, you can get some interesting stuff out of it. Cool, then I'm just going to edit the synth a little bit more, edit a bit of everything a little bit more in honesty, just do a bit more mixing, and I don't feel like you need to see this, it's just all the tweaking that doesn't matter. But we're going to bounce out the pluck track and do the same as we did for the chords, more pitch bend. We're only going to use the latter half of this loop, we don't need the full thing. And now just figure out where you think you would hear bends. This seems to be a big thing in a lot of APHEX Twin's later stuff, so you know, just little bits like this. I much prefer doing it like this, because there's a lot more freedom to how far you can bend and how it bends, and especially with the WOAH algorithms. Like if I change this to rhythm, it would sound so different. Or if I change this to texture and also automated the grain size or the flux, or, you know, there's a lot more freedom to this than just a pitch wheel. And yeah, anyway, with these kind of lead things, just do funky bends, you know, where there's a bit of sustain, bend it. I normally do somewhere between 7 and 12 semitones, fifth or an octave, you know. I think it sounds funky as hell. I mean, there's a bit of a tape stop thing at the end again. If you can't tell from my last video and this video, I'm getting a fan of the tape stop bend. Alright, and that's pretty much done. I mean, yeah, there's no bass, I am sorry about that, but the bass would be a whole separate video in itself. However, the video I did last year about this era of APHEX Twin does include the sequencing techniques of bass, so go watch that. I'll link it once more. Bing! Alright, just doing some more editing, doing some parallel processing on that plucky lead, thing. Bit of stuff on the master, and yeah, in one of the Syro tracks, there's like a Russian lady talking. So let's have a look. Apparently, it's APHEX Twin's wife. I don't have a Russian lady, so we're going to use some Red Dead 2 dialogue. If you know this scene, it's heartbreaking, so we're going to use that classic YouTuber to WAV.
The world makes sense, but when we are apart, I see clearly that your world is in it.
I don't own the copyright to this, but anyway, chorus and autofilter to make it sound like that original Russian lady talking. And then, you know, chop up some phrases you want, select them all, and then we're just going to do follow actions and click other. Where is it? There it is. Follow action, other, sweet. Nice. And then this is what we end up with. So I hope you enjoyed the video and I hope it helped.
But when we are apart, I see clearly that your world is not a world from which one can escape. And it seems you cannot live any other way when I'm with you.